Today, we're going to wrap up our three-part series on website conversions. I'll walk you through a recent client audit that really transformed an interior designer's website's performance through these strategic data-driven changes. And you'll see exactly how we identified these opportunities, we implemented the improvements, and then we measured the success. All changes that you really can apply to your own website. By learning about Julie's journey, you might be able to spot similar conversion opportunities in your own analytics and make updates that will attract more inquiries. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here for part three of our series. And today I'm going to share a real case study from my client, Julie, who I first worked with about 3 years ago. We're going to look at the tools that I use to identify some issues going on with her websites, the changes that we made, and the results that she's seeing. And don't worry if you haven't listened to the first two episodes. I will explain everything as we go, and I'll link them below too if you want to take a listen. But before we jump into the episode, just a quick hello if you're new here or if you forget who you're listening to. I'm Jenny B, owner of Jenny B Designs, and I love helping small business owners like you really create a beautiful and strategic online presence that attracts your ideal clients and makes you money. And at the end of the day, I really believe your website's there to make you money, which is how this whole conversion series came about. Today, we're going to talk about my client, Julie, from First Impressions by Julie Wagner. She is out of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We worked together 3 years ago to build her website, and she has a thriving interior design business. We wanted to create a space that truly reflected her style and brought out her personality. And when we built the website 3 years ago, we launched it off into the world. And ever since then, she's been putting in time doing blog posts and kind of keeping updated on things as they change into her website. She came to me and requested a website audit. And the first thing I do is dive into her analytics and also kind of look and see what's going on the front end with her design and on her pages. This is what I always suggest the first thing that you do. You go through and look at the page by page on the front end of your website. And then you're going to want to open the tools that I chatted about in the previous episode. Google Analytics, Google Search Console. And if you don't have it installed yet, something like a heat map, like a Hotjar. Get that on your website as well so that you can understand what people are actually doing on your website. When I did the audit, what I found was that she had a fair amount of traffic going to her website, and she had some strong organic traffic, meaning people were finding her on search, particularly from a couple of blog posts. We also noticed she had a spike in traffic in February and March, and that 60% of her traffic is coming to her website from desktop. This is actually really helpful to know because when we designed this website, we wanted it to really showcase her work. And of course, her work is beautiful, and we do that with full width imagery. And when you are experiencing that from mobile, it's a little bit different than looking at it on a desktop. And understanding that we do have a fair amount of desktop traffic makes us know that it's okay to continue sharing these beautiful images the way that we have them. We also understood that she was getting some referrals from House. It's one of her referral sources. So that was a great thing to keep going for the next year. The next thing I looked at, and I talked about this when we were talking about reports that we look over, is the exit report from your Google Analytics. Learning to see where people are actually leaving your websites, which pages. And we learned for her, a lot of people were leaving on the contact page, which isn't unusual because, this is where kind of the rubber meets the road. People either send you an inquiry or they don't. And you're not going to get everyone who comes to your website giving you an inquiry. That's understandable. But we also learned that people were leaving on the portfolio page, then the services, the about, and then some specific blog posts. And finally, the last thing that we looked at, and we talked about this last episode, is heat mapping, Hotjar. I put it on there for a little bit to just record a few sessions so that I could understand what people were doing when they got to her website. And we learned through a couple of recordings that on the contact page, it gave us some instances where people were kind of sitting there for a little bit, not knowing what to do. Same went for the services page. People would read it through and then only finally take action at the bottom versus taking action earlier in the page. And so thinking about it, was there a reason why they were doing that? Could it be the copy, or could it be that there weren't any calls to action? Maybe an opportunity would be to add some more calls to action. And for the contact page, this page again is where it all happens. And you don't need to be surprised that you might have a higher exit rate on this page. But there's always an opportunity to look and see what can you optimize on this page to make it a little bit better and to make it easier for people to actually fill out your form and take the next step with you. Because of these reports and these analytics that we looked at, I was able to make a few changes. And here's the changes that we made. The first one is the contact page. I mentioned when we were looking at where people were leaving the site, the contact page was number one. Yes, this is understandable, but I always like to make sure that the contact page is optimized as much as possible. And from that heat map that I watched, some people were confused where to go, scrolling up and down, because she did have a contact page that was very long. Because so many people are coming from a desktop, I made it so that it wasn't such a long scroll and that we have a form on the left side and then on the right side, a picture of Julie and call now button, because she does offer people to be able to fill out a form or schedule a 15-minute discovery call, either one. She wants people to be able to get in touch. And by doing this, we are getting people that prime real estate, offering them two different ways to get started without having to scroll down too much further. I streamlined the layout to really reduce that decision fatigue and to kind of make sure that people understand what Julie wants them to do. The second page we made changes to was the portfolio page. We were learning that people were leaving from that page. When you got to that page, it was mostly just her work. So we decided to add some copy, a little bit of an intro copy there to talk about her projects and what people are going to see on that portfolio page. And to also add a call to action to get in touch before the gallery, before they got going. So I'm able to give some context before showcasing her work. On the services page, at the top, people were also leaving. So again, we wanted to share a concise value prop at the top, meaning when someone comes to that services page, immediately they understand what they're going to get from this service. Make it a little bit more clear. And then also add a call to action button there, right front and center, with service descriptions that had a little bit more meat to them with clear outcomes attached. And finally, this is probably the most important, was her blog strategy. We saw that a couple of her blog posts were actually getting really good traffic. She was showing up in search for a blog post she wrote in 2020. And this is really important. She was getting traffic coming to that blog post page, but they were also leaving once they got there. So taking a look at her blog post, I decided it would be really good to add a sidebar. This would give some interest to people who are coming to your website through a blog. Because when they come there, they read the blog post and then they're not sure where to go next. If you do have a sidebar, it shares a little bit about who you are. Maybe you can link to your lead magnet and you can share some top performing posts like I did for Julie. What that does is it allows people to get curious about you and stay on your website longer and stop leaving from that page, stop exiting from that blog post. I also did some internal linking so that on the blog posts that were ranking well, we connected some other pages on her website so that they would stay on the site for longer. Now, let's talk about the results that she's seeing so far. And it's only been less than 60 days. And when you make changes, it takes a little bit of time for everything to kind of settle in and for you to see the results. But I will say that we are seeing some encouraging statistics show up by looking at her Google Search Console, her Google Analytics, and reviewing some newer Hotjar recordings. Her bounce rate, the people who come to your website and then just leave immediately, and most of them were coming to those blog posts that they were finding on search, as well as landing on her services page. She was able to see a reduction in bounce rate by almost 5%. This is really early, but it is saying that people who are coming to her website are sticking around longer. The number of engaged sessions, you can find this in your Google Analytics, have increased by over 5%, meaning that the people who are coming there are engaged. They're staying on her website longer. And the average session duration is up by 8%. The amount of time that someone is staying on the website is up. meaning that some of these changes that we made were taking effect, that people were getting there and weren't just leaving. Everything that we're doing is working together in harmony. We added that sidebar in the blog. We tried to do some internal linking, added some more copy to a few of the pages that they were leaving on to increase the understanding of what's going on in those pages. And looking at that contact page, making sure that it was super, super clear. All of these things can be easily updated. And when you are taking a look at your analytics and seeing where people are leaving and how long they're staying, you can start to think about, well, what can I do on my website to see if I can mitigate some of these issues and make some changes so that you do start to see increased conversion. Some of the things that I talked about with Julie to consider doing in this year is the following. I love to see video on pages on your website. It does so many things. Not only does it help people understand who you are and what you do in a different and more powerful way, but people stay on your website longer because you actually have video. Something for Julie to consider for this year is to add a video to her About page. I also love to see an FAQ page that has a lot of Q&As that your potential clients ask. These are things that most people want to know, and these are parts of your website that potential clients will read. They'll spend time on, they'll dwindle on these pages that can only help you tell Google that you do have good relevant content. And when someone actually does reach out to you, that they won't have to ask you these questions, they'll already know. And then looking at some of the blog posts that I talked about from the report that she was getting decent traffic from, what were they about? And can we write for something this year that is similar to that? In fact, one of them was a color of the year one of them was from 2020. So I suggested, what can we do for 2024? Can you write about a color of the year for last year? Can you write about an upcoming color of the year for 2025? What can you write about that is trending right now that refers to the content that was doing really well? And then finally, the last thing that I shared was that she was getting a fair amount of referrals from House. That is one of the directories that she's on. If you're looking at your own website, where are you getting referrals? Is it something that you could pay for? If it is and you're not seeing the referrals, then maybe you don't pay for it this year. Or if you are getting referrals from there, what can you do to increase that? And how can you get more connected with that group? These are all things that I shared with Julie. And it's all about making these small data-driven changes. They really can create significant improvements when they're properly tracked and measured. You have these three tools that I've been sharing about over these last 3 episodes: Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and a Hotjar type heat map situation to look at from your website. When you can look at that data and make these small changes, you can truly make a difference in the amount of conversions that you will have on your website. Some takeaways from this episode and all 3 episodes. If you haven't already listened to the other 2, I'm going to link them below, but I encourage you to make sure that you are using these data tools, that they are tracking this information for you, that you are reviewing your exit pages and how people are really accessing your website, and that you're tracking the changes that you made and the results consistently. Today, sharing about Julie, I wanted to share with you how I made some changes on a website for a client that you can consider doing and applying to your own website. And if any of these strategies resonated with you, but you'd rather skip the learning curve, not deal with any of these analytics, then I would love to help you. When you book a website audit, I will analyze your data, identify opportunities, and really give you a clear roadmap for improving your conversions. Click the link in the show notes to schedule your website audit today. And I hope that Julie's story shows you that small strategic changes can really create significant results. I'll catch you next time.